Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the Dr. Penny L. Hamrick Doctoral Student Colloquium. We're here with our wonderful guests and presenters. And tonight I would like to acknowledge Dr. Christine Lewis Grant as our faculty moderator. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much and good luck.
Thank you so much, Jamina. Welcome to the School of Education, Dr. Penny L. Hamrick Doctoral Student Colloquium Series presentation, renamed a few years ago in memory of former Dean Penny L. Hamrick. The Doctoral Student Colloquium Series was created by Dr. Hamrick in 2016 when she served as the Associate Dean of Graduate Affairs and Program Director of the School of Education's PhD and EDD programs. I am Professor Christine Lewis Grant, and I'm going to be the moderator this evening. We are so pleased to welcome all of our virtual attendees, including School of Education faculty, staff, students, and alumni, the university body at large, community members, and partner associations, among others. The Colloquium Series offers School of Education doctoral students and alumni an opportunity to share their original research and learn from their peers, faculty, and staff. Each month, one EDD and one PhD student presents their research at the Colloquium. These sessions help doctoral students to connect with each other and develop a peer community that is invaluable in supporting their journeys in the program. Each doctoral student or alumni presenter is also asked to write a research brief that relates to their presentation, which is included in an edited publication titled Doctoral Student Research Briefs, published on the School of Education's website. The research brief is a way to disseminate our doctoral students' research as shared in the colloquium in a concise format with relevance to education. Each presenter will be provided with 20 minutes to share their research. We will then move on to questions and answers following each presentation. Please save your questions for the end. You are welcome to type your questions in the chat area of Zoom or to use your mic to ask questions at the appropriate time. With that, we're going to turn our attention to our second presenter, and I think that we will see there are a number of echoes in Dr. Ladson's work. I had the pleasure of being Dr. Nia Ladson's supervising professor and chair, and so I'm very pleased to present her presentation this evening. The title of Dr. Ladson's presentation is Despite We Stayed. Experienced Black teachers reflect on the reasons why they stay in the classroom, a phenomenological study. Dr. Nia Ladson is a Black educator with extensive K-12 experience. She currently serves as regional academic leader for KIPP Texas Public Schools, overseeing humanities and literacy curriculum and instruction for secondary schools. Her career includes leadership roles in Baltimore City Public Schools, City Teaching Alliance, formerly Urban Teachers, the KIPP Foundation, and KIPP Texas Public Schools, serving in Houston, Dallas, Austin, and San Antonio. Nia's dedication to Black teacher retention stems from both her firsthand experiences working with educators and her own journey in education. Dr. Ladson holds a Bachelor of Arts from the College of William and Mary, a Master's in Elementary Education, and a Master's in Special Education from Lesley University, a Master's of Education and Educational Leadership from Loyola University in Maryland, and a Doctorate in Educational Leadership and Management from Drexel. Guided by the transformative paradigm, her research addresses systemic inequities in education. Using hermeneutic phenomenology, she examines the lived experiences of Black teachers to identify strategies for improving retention. Dr. Ladson is committed to creating solutions that help school districts better support and empower Black teachers, ensuring their success in the profession. And with that, I turn over the floor to Nia.
Thank you, Dr. Grant, and future Dr. Crumbo. It is beautiful to see the lines connect as we explore the research and also hear from both of our perspectives and where your research plans to go and where mine went. So I'm very excited to present this evening. Thank you all for being present. It is super, super important to be able to share the work that is being done. And we're going to talk a little bit about the sociopolitical context of our nation currently and why this research matters so much now. And I want to start with just kind of framing that before we jump in. The reality of those pieces and how that actually has shifted my work, knowing that I published this last May in June, is centering the fact that Black teachers really do matter, despite what we are being told from various messages that live within the context of our country. And so I want to situate them at the center of this conversation because that is what this research is about. There is a wealth of research that actually shows that Black teachers positively impact all students, no matter their race or background. And there are researchers like Carver Thomas, Cherning Halpin, and Rodman Shirt and Jean that really highlight that work. Their life and breath is around pushing the academic success of students, and that is true amongst their work with students. And prior to Brown v. Board of Education, about 17 states that had segregated schools, 35 to 50% of the teaching workforce was Black. And so when we think about the disparity around Black teachers and the stark comparison of now showing less than 7% of Black educators in the overall workforce today, we know we have a presented problem. Black teachers are the sole minority demographic that has continually shown a decrease in the number of teachers staying in the teacher workforce, no matter what its comparison looks like. And when comparing those teacher statistics in these longitudinal studies that take place, such as the NCES, we see that they went from 9 to 8%, and today even looking at 7% as the most recent research that has been published. And so when you situate that statistic alongside the historical context of Black teachers in the teacher workforce, it is clear that Black teachers need to be situated at the center of the conversation when driving the diverse platforms and diverse classrooms of our nation. And so that really led me to study this really big problem. We have a ton of research that exists around why Black teachers are leaving and why teachers of color are leaving the classroom specifically. But this study really aimed to understand and interview Black teachers with 3 or more years of experience to understand what are the factors that influence their decision to stay. What is it that keeps them in the work? And the purpose of this hermeneutic phenomenological study was to explore how Black teachers describe their own experiences in public schools with attention to the individual and institutional factors they identify as contributing to their retention. And so I grounded really in 3 big questions. How do Black teachers describe their lived experiences within public schools? To what individual factors do Black teachers in public schools attribute to their retention? And to what institutional factors do Black teachers in public schools attribute their retention? And that was really guided by 3 huge streams. So the first, the lasting effects of desegregation on Black teacher retention when we study how Black teachers during segregation actually were situated, and then journey into how African-American teachers before and after Brown v. Board of Education and the Civil Rights Act of 1964 were situated, what that really looked like in our numbers and our demographics overall, and then the impact of that work and the impact of Brown v. Board of Education and the Civil Rights Act of 1964 on ed policy and how that began to shift the dynamic around teacher preparation and teacher requirements. Then we moved into really guiding the research in stream 2 around individual factors that contribute to Black teacher retention. So this essence of push and pull factors contributing to Black teacher retention. What about Black love and Black joy that lives in a classroom around education really illuminates Black teachers, racial consciousness and that political clarity that really guides a lot of Black teachers when they're talking about their experiences in the work. And then the impacts of self-efficacy on Black teacher retention. And that the third really big stream that guided this work was thinking about the institutional factors that contribute to Black teacher retention, things like teacher education and preparation programs, school level policies, and we'll see some remnants of threads between future Dr. Crumbo's work and mine when we talk about this, but teacher mentorship and coaching, school leadership and their impact on that work, curriculum and its impact on that work, and working conditions. What does that really mean? How did that impact Black teachers? And then the impacts of district level home growing practices, teacher salaries and sustainability of the work, and the impacts of professional development on Black teacher retention. And so in designing this work, I really situated hermeneutic phenomenology as the center of this, really using a Black teacher's experiences and their lived experiences as the essence or the text of life in which I was really studying and centralizing in this work. Really thinking about what is at play and what is really encapsulated in a Black teacher's experience. And in doing so, I moved through really collecting 3 major pieces of data. The first was background surveys and really just centering age of participants, years of experience, horizontal community, and those pieces, situating that with their resumes to validate where they've experienced teaching and what their diverse experiences have looked like. And then moving through one-on-one semi-structured interviews. I did 2 rounds of interviews. So the first round was about 90 to 120 minutes. And then the second one was 30 to 60 minutes, which really just focused on clarifying parts, adding additional insights, and coming back to big questions that were illuminated in first round coding. And so when doing this, I really centered Black teachers that have been teaching for 3 or more years. And that was really, really important. They needed to identify as a Black, a person of African descent. They needed to teach in the U.S. public schools currently, and they had to have at least 3 full consecutive years of experience in public schools to really make sure that we know that statistics actually tell us like 1/3 of new teachers leave at some point in their years. And so really focusing on the folks that have stayed for 3 or more, really attributed to those that have stayed in the workforce. And so when looking at participants, it was also really important to make sure that there was a diverse array of participants. There was a wealth of diverse aspects to this, but really representing the workforce at large. So we looked at the numbers between gender and identity and looking at those pieces. It was directly proportionate to what we see in the workforce, and trying to make sure that there's diverse representation there, but also across the years of experience. And then also thinking about how horizontal community is represented there, knowing the number of high schools that we have to elementary schools to middle schools, understanding the realities of how schools are built and school models are built. And then also understanding really what the range of schools taught, number of range of schools taught by different participants. And so these were really thinking about the participant demographics and how all of these parts intersect. And that led to some major themes. The first is really thinking about race in America, and is always something to navigate, especially in schools, Black teachers, racist school environments. And this was one that was really sad to see eliminate in the research, but also was very pertinent around situating participants' racialized experiences, some that spoke differently depending upon what they were actually, their leadership experiences were. So there were 2 participants that I'll call out right here that really just highlighted this dynamic that could exist, or this polarized experience. The first is schools are still using racist tactics and intentional racism, which lives in the fabric of our academic sector, and really thinking about how their racialized experiences played out. And the second is really thinking about how this participant situated their all Black leadership team differently and experienced race differently in that school, not experiencing racial fatigue or racism. So it shared really that they just didn't remember experiencing that. And so it was a very interesting intersection of that work. The second theme that really emerged was I don't have any support, Black teachers and diminished school support. And this really fixated on teachers having the support that they needed to be successful in the classroom. So the participant that's pieces really highlighted here is giving teachers the actual tools of how to do it, how to teach, not the what to teach, and being willing to like be a learner alongside them. This was a really big piece that came out of the research, is really making sure that teachers are prepared and they feel supported on their everyday instruction. The third one was the money and the job stability keep me here. This was a really interesting one around Black teachers and financial stability, really circling and highlighting that a lot of Black teachers stayed in the workforce and really highlighted their relationship with financial sustainability. And this one participant really highlighted it by saying, I come from a Black family that has trauma around money. And because of that, I think the pay has impacted my decisions. This is the most amount of money I've made in my life, period. And that keeps me here because I can't afford to change that now. The last really big theme that emerged was this aspect of Black joy. Black joy as an educator is operating in my most authentic self, Black joy for Black teachers. And various participants actually spoke about that joy. I feel like my joy comes from teaching student academic strategies. When my students feel academically successful, that's when I have joy. And so all of this research really led to work around the results and really highlighting 5 major results. The first was, despite experiences in witnessing racism in their schools, study participants remained in the profession. And we see that highlighted by existing research that has really lived by Alan Handy, Ferinde Wu, McKinney et al. And then result 2 was really, despite a lack of support from their school and district leaders, study participants remained in the profession. We see that really highlighted by Kraft et al. And Stanley, and really illuminated and extended upon. Result 3, despite low salaries, study participants remained in the profession. We see that really illuminated in Suture, Darling Hammond, and Carver Thomas, as well as Smith's work. And then result 4, while study participants remained in the profession despite the challenges of racism, lack of support, and low pay, they did seek out better working conditions by changing schools. And we see that really highlighted in work like by Elfers et al., Tay and Lewis. And the last really result that we saw living was result 5, despite the adverse challenges named participants consistently cite their care for cultural commitment to historically underserved communities and as their primary reasons for staying in the work. And that was really highlighted by Fenwick and Miller, and we see that existing in their research. And so the major conclusions in guiding really thinking about my big research questions was, how do Black teachers describe their lived experiences within public schools? Most of them situated their race at the center of that conversation. They had a different experience based on their racialized lens. Overall, Black teachers navigated a range of experiences within the teacher workforce, characterized by both highs and lows. And that was multifaceted and influenced by factors such as gender, age, tenure, and a lot of other variables, sometimes beyond their direct control. And so there were specific individual factors that they highlighted really attributed to their retention. The first was their belief in the importance of representation in front of their students, specifically when they served in historically marginalized communities. And then their desire for racially inclusive and supportive school environments. And then the institutional factors that really they focused on was really thinking about, there aren't a ton that are working within the system, but they are directly impacted by the financial sustainability and stability of the workforce, and then also teacher support. And so when moving through recommendations around what could really be true in this research and what would need to come next is really thinking about how we elevate teacher salaries universally to guarantee livable and sustainable wages, because so much of this element was around living and sustaining life. Enhancing diversity, equity, inclusion practices within schools to cultivate supportive environments for Black teachers, which again, will need to move through a different conversation and lens as we think about the socio-political context of our nation currently. Enhancing policies related to teacher preparation and school-based support to effectively prepare and develop educators, particularly Black educators. Implementing enhanced tracking systems to monitor teachers transitioning between districts within and across state lines. And then implementing comprehensive training programs for school administrators focused on racial biases and awareness. And so when I was thinking through like future research and things that I'd like to continue to explore, these were the major things that I really lived in, which was first expanding and deepening the current research to include a more diverse array of participants across various cities and settings, including prioritizing the experiences of Black teachers in rural and affluent areas to have things to actually contrast or actually compare. Additional funding to conduct school-based observations and more in-depth interviews with participants to be able to see experiences live and redact them. And then interdisciplinary collaboration and thinking about all of the parts that actually intersect with this work, because some of it is political policy, and some of it is deeply around economics. And then continuing to explore focus on retention and exploring what factors contribute to Black teachers staying in the classroom. And that was my research. So thank you guys for your time. It was a beautiful moment to see Dr. Crumbo's work and mine kind of collide. If you are someone who'd like to read this work, it is published. And so you have the DOI there, and you can also use the QR code to search it. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ladson. I would love to open up the floor for questions for Dr. Ladson about her work. And Nia, you got a number of congratulations and love represented in the chat there. Please, anyone who would like to offer a comment or a question, the floor is open. Nia, I'll get us started with one question. Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Rasmussen, please go ahead.
I just wondered where and how have you been sharing this? What are you doing with this?
Dr. Lewis Grant and I have had a lot of conversations about this and where she'd like me to go with this, but honestly, I took a little bit of a pause. I support Black teachers a ton in the work that I do on a day-to-day basis. And so some of it has actually been bringing it to my actual like day-to-day work with my organization at first and really making sure it lives there, and then sharing it with folks as we are now really elevating that conversation. It has emerged a lot, actually, a ton more now that we are moving through the sociopolitical context that we are. So I'm very intrigued to see where that goes, and very invested in expanding it and thinking about what does come next and what is the second part to that story.
Actually, Dr. Rasmussen's question is similar to mine. I was going to ask you, how is your research informing the work that you're currently doing?
Yeah, it has been a very interesting day-to-day basis, especially being on the ground supporting teachers in a lot of different diversities, and thinking about how that lives out in my interactions, how that's modeled within our organization, and then how I reinforce that with our leaders, because I also train our leaders, our school assistant principals, as well as our school leaders and our school leader managers and some of our superintendents. And so that is like a really big piece of that work, and really centralizing what are the experiences of our teachers and some of our most vulnerable populations, knowing that we serve predominantly Black and Latinx communities.
I'll say one more thing. I don't want to dominate the conversation, but at the time of your study and even now hearing your presentation again, I'm still so struck by the fact that teacher salaries are low, but yet teacher salary, like their financial stability, was one of the primary reasons why your participants stayed. I wonder if you could speak more to that kind of conundrum, and if you've had any new insights on that since your study completed.
Yeah, that has actually been one that I've seen a lot in the workforce, as some of the Black teachers that I actually support have navigated very contentious working conditions. And so one of the things that a lot of them speak solely of is around the number of years. I think in this research was something to be said more than I think I realized at the time, even being 3 years into a workforce and highlighting, as you guys saw on the screen, there were quite a few participants that were in their 10 plus. That like higher end of things. And so starting career over when you have a family, a mortgage, other pieces playing out in your personal life also made a lot of participants describe this stuckness, this feeling stuck and not being able to break. And wanting to pivot, wanting to try something new, wanting to shift, but not being in a space where that is possible. And a few of them really talked about the lack of generational wealth, actually like pigeoning them into a space, knowing that you have things like student loans, and that we see that disparity really exist across mainly persons of color, and thinking about what that looks like when they leave institutions that were their training ground and having to start over again. And so I am deeply interested to see and expand on that. I think there is some conundrumness, I think, really living in that when you talk to folks. There's a lot of layers, there's a lot of nuances to that existence, and it's often competing priorities and competing demands of their personal lives as well.
Hello, Dr. Ladson. I have a question for you. Really, of course, loved your research. It also echoes some of the things like I might have mentioned before that I'm really interested in. But I'm curious, your participants, when they talked about the joy that they found, was it the joy in teaching? Was it the joy that they found maybe hopefully working with other Black teachers or teaching Black students? Kind of where did that what was the catalyst for that joy that they found in teaching, being that it's probably such a struggle to, sometimes be a few in a school, or, maybe not teaching students that look like you or having administration that looks like you. So what was kind of what brought on that joy for them?
Yeah, it was actually very interesting. There were a lot of points of joy that was very true for participants. Some of it was around seeing the academic growth and success of students. Some of it was around seeing themselves in students, that like representation piece for them. And then some of it was that concept of like, as a teacher, I definitely did this, close my door, and I just want to teach. I don't want to deal with the outside pieces, right? And so it was kind of those three things really came up quite a bit. But that third one was one that was really interesting to hear teachers really peel back the layers of like, I just want to do the work. I don't want to deal with all the other pieces. I want to love on my kids, and I want to teach. And if you can't support me in doing that, this work starts to feel more daunting. And so their joy was really centered in that.
Nia, I have one question for you from the chat from Jamie Whitfield Coffin. She writes, given the urgency of education, exploring joy is an important topic that deserves to be highlighted. As a principal supervisor,
I think she froze, but I think everybody else is here. I think the end of this question is really
Nia,
how.
I'm here. I'm here, Nia. Hi, how are
Okay.
you? So
Good, how
my
are you?
question, I'm good, thank you, and congratulations. So my question just is around, so as a principal supervisor right now, I think one of the things that I notice a lot in my principals is that they're having a hard time finding joy with the amount of things that are kind of stacked on their plates and just the climate that we're in. And so I guess one of the questions that I have for you is just as you have thought about your research, how are you using what you found out in order to kind of coach your teachers and your administrators up in that area?
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation because it is something that I am having the conversation with our leaders around right now, knowing where we are in the year. So those who work in a building, we are in that runway to state assessments. And this is when schools start to go kind of chaotic, and folks start doing a lot of things, and there's a lot of pressure. And so I think, Jimmy, when I think about this, it's something that I really ground for them in that season is the spirit of culture, of like celebration, and fostering a culture of celebration around student growth and not just achievement. There is this push that we see in numbers as we see math results decline, as we see literacy results stagnate. And there is this anxiousness that is amidst most school leaders and assistant principals. And so really living in that, like, how do we foster and support student growth and celebrate them? And then what does it look like to do that as a community, families included? And pushing my leaders to really think about what that looks like. There's a ton of bad data and information out about school and education right now, but there are also beautiful moments in the corners of classrooms. And what does that really look like? And how do we celebrate it?
Thank you. I appreciate that response. I think one of the things that some colleagues and I have been talking about is kind of what you also just talked about at the end too, was just this idea of storytelling and the fact that so many things happen during the course of the day, but how do we just kind of pause and think about the stories, those good moments that are happening in our classroom, and then really lift those to kind of bring about that joy too. So thank you for sharing your perspective. I appreciate it.
And I think I will say that as a district leader, one of the things that I push other district leaders to do is to find those pockets. So one of the things that I pushed a lot of our superintendents and our school leader managers to do is, where are the schools that you're going to connect with kids? Sometimes in those roles, you sit at a desk and you do not interact and you do not see the experiences of teachers and leaders in the same way when they're on the ground doing the work every day. But modeling that for them, having my own student sample that I'm doing that with right now, showing that and presenting that and opening in that work when I'm moving in development spaces is also deeply impactful for them. And quite a few of them have employed it for themselves. And that has been a beautiful moment too. So really grounding them in that. But sometimes they forget that. So as a school leader manager, that's something I would push you to think about with your colleagues as well.
Thank you so very much. I would like to conclude by thanking our presenters, Maria Luisa and Nia, for presenting today. This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you to everyone who came out this evening to participate and attend and support. And I would like to thank you all for attending this series. We look forward to seeing you at the next colloquium event on Monday, March the 3rd. Take care and have a good evening. Stay safe.